Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining me. My name is Alan, and I'm here with another broadcast of the Morlock Morning Digest for you. You can help the channel grow by liking, subscribing, hitting the bell for notifications, but most importantly, I ask that you share the content. I appreciate you guys being here with me. You can find a donation link in the description below, paypal.me/MorlockMorningDigest. Now, I do believe that I have the last reset event pinned down, at least in my mind. Now, mind you, this is speculation, but there is a bunch of circumstantial evidence to back this up. One of the biggest things I want you guys to understand before we step forward into this explanation is that 1650 marks the date of the reset in my mind, meaning anything in recorded history prior to 1650 is more than likely bunk in my mind. The reason I postulate this is because if you run any of your lineages back to 1650, I almost guarantee you they will not predate that year. And the reason being is because our world historically has been run from the dawn of human civilization to the best of our knowledge by 9 families. And these 9 families have literally determined the direction that this world has moved in from 1650 forward. And there is no doubt about that at all. You know who these families are: the Rothschilds, Soros, etc., etc. Now, if you look at a lot of these historical figures, they definitely fall into these bloodlines. There is no doubt about that. However, your bloodline more than likely doesn't. And there is a very good reason for that, and that is because the last reset happened right around 1650. Now, I want to point to comets as my next bit of anecdotal evidence. And why is this important? Well, I've postulated that we go through these catastrophes or these resets on a cyclical cycle every 400 years or so. Now, it just so happens that 1650 was just about 400 years ago, was it not? Now, according to historical records right around that time, there was definitely comets and events happening in the sky, such as alignments. Well, there's something special about 2020. Not only is there a bunch of stuff going on as far as a comet being above our head right now, we are having an eclipse on the solstice twice this year, right? We are having 7 astrological alignments as far as planets are concerned that only happen once every 400 years or so, and they're all happening at the same exact time in the same exact year. We have an eclipse, as I said, happening on the solstice, all right? And on top of that, we are seeing a bunch of electrical events taking place all over the world. Now, how do comets tie into electrical events? Well, I don't believe comets are extraterrestrial bodies flying through space that are about to hit our planet. Rather, I believe that they are local. And not only that, but I believe that they are electrical phenomena and not an actual physical body. And the reason I point to this is because if you look at the Earth in a closed system, flat Earth model, the Earth is designed as a battery. And what does a battery need? It needs a fluid to work as a conductor, i.e. our ocean as well as our atmosphere. Now, what few people realize is superfluids, right? Nitrogen conducts electricity only at very, 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 very cold temperatures. It becomes a superconductor at that point. Okay. Now, if you look at the way that our world was put together as a creation, as a building, the higher and higher you go in elevation until you reach the firmament, the cooler and cooler that it gets. Now, our atmosphere is 95% nitrogen. So, the higher and higher and higher you go inside of this closed system, the cooler and cooler and cooler that nitrogen gets, meaning it becomes superconductive at a certain point, allowing phenomena like the aurora borealis, allowing phenomena like the stars that we see in the sky, because stars are electrical phenomena. They are not terrestrial bodies, okay? They are not. I don't care who you are, I will argue this to the death. Now, what does this mean? Well, as I've postulated in my previous video, about these pandemics being caused by us introducing electrical phenomena into the world. It may very well be the world introducing electrical phenomena to us naturally. Now, I want you guys to think about the Mormons out in the Southwest. Okay, we're supposed to believe that the Mormons showed up and built these giant cathedrals in the 1800s using nothing but covered wagons, the tools of the frontiersmen, etc., etc. However, if we look at these buildings today, right, our own architects are incapable of recreating them. That makes absolutely no sense at all. And we see this all over the world with a ton and ton and ton of buildings, which leads me to believe these buildings predated the reset. Now, you have to ask yourself, what type of event could have caused this reset? Now, there's very interesting experiments that I've seen done with sheets of steel that are about 1.5 inches thick, and they're being done with a plasma gun. Basically, you take a negative and positive end, right? You attach the negative end to the plate itself, right? And you take the positive plasma torch and you touch it to the other end of the steel plate. And what's interesting is this plasma starts to heat the steel up from the inside and cause arcing to appear on the surface of it. Now, the patterns that this arcing creates when it's destroying the steel and making divots in it like little canyons, right, mimic exactly what these canyon basins in Arizona, in India, all over the world, Russia, right? When you see these giant river valleys, they mimic identically what these patterns look like on this steel plate. Now, what's interesting on top of all of this is these patterns are found in regions on our plane that are void of vegetation. They are void of what you would consider to be natural terrain for the area that they are found in. I want you guys to consider for a moment the southwest of the United States. I want you to compare it to all the surrounding terrain. Is there any logical explanation that there is a desert sitting out in the southwest of the United States when you compare it to the rest of the country at the same exact latitude? And the answer to that question is inevitably no. You see the same exact thing happening in the Sahara Desert right now, okay? Another thing that's very interesting is in the United States, if you look at the population density, right, the southwest region, especially down in Utah near the Salt Lake cities and the Grand Canyon, it is very, very, very sparse. Not a lot of people live there, obviously. You can't have vegetation, you can't grow crops, etc., etc., etc. However, there is evidence that these areas were the most fertile in the world previous to our last reset. Now, you may be asking yourself, what caused this type of event to happen? Well, in the year 1800, there was a deep freeze. The entire Earth cooled down dramatically. However, this right here was a tiny event compared to what would have happened. Now, I'm going to say this right now. Yes, there's a 400-year cyclical cycle that takes place between solar minimums. However, there's a 200-year cycle that takes place within that 400-year cycle where you see a minor minimum that causes a cooling. This is based on data from looking back at the past, looking at written records that human beings themselves have written down. And in the 1800s, what just so happens to be 200 years between 1600 and 2020, right? Just so happens that the entire Earth cooled rapidly, okay? And on top of that, you saw disease break out, right? Now, what happened? As I've said, the bodies above our head are electrical, okay? That means the sun is a body of electricity. I think of it as a transformer, and that is more than likely what it is if you think of the Earth as a battery. You're going to need an anode and a diode, as well as a transformer, as well as a conductive liquid. Okay, the sun is more than likely that transformer. Now, what happens if the anode and diode, which is Rahu and Ketu, if you haven't done any research into those, that would be considered the black sun, okay, as well as another body, planet X, all right? They act as the anode and diode, okay? And the sun is the transformer. But if the anode and diode get out of whack, right, it causes an electrical imbalance inside of the system. Now, the system will naturally correct itself and reestablish this connection, right? But until it does, you're going to see a period in time in which the everything is trying to balance itself out, right? So you're going to get a colder snap. You're going to get a period where the sun isn't producing the way that it normally does. And it would make sense that this happens on a cycle, just like everything else we witness in the natural world. But us as human beings, right, we've been trained not to see these cycles because we've been removed from them. One of the biggest things that happened after the last reset was moving us over to a new calendar system, which was controlled by the Phoenicians, right? The phonies, the people that rewrote history, okay? Do you really think that the monks sat back in the monasteries, back in the Dark Ages, back in the Middle Ages, and drank beer? No, they were sitting there and rewriting history, right? Now, another thing you have to realize is you cannot look at the timeline you were taught in school, right, and try to insert it into this. My postulation is there is about 1,000 years of history, right, that was just made up. Because if you go back and you actually dig into people who were going to areas like Rome, right, that were going to areas like Greece, that were going to areas like India, during the times that those civilizations were supposed to be building structures such as the Colosseum, etc., etc., those buildings were not there, according to people who wrote down first-hand accounts of being there in a year that those buildings were supposed to be constructed, right? Which means those buildings had to have been constructed afterwards, which means our entire modern history was made up. All of it, right? And it was all made up so they can control the next reset. Think about this for a moment. Every secret society known to man has a 200-year plan. What is the point of having a 200-year plan if you're not going to be around for it? Well, that's because 200 years ago, your family bloodline, those 8 bloodlines, all did the same thing previously because they have knowledge we don't. Think about this for a moment. If you're going to burn down the Library of Alexandria, are you going to leave the books in the library before you burn it down, or are you going to hoard the books and learn everything you can and keep them in a freaking secret library under the Vatican? They never got rid of that knowledge. They still have it. Now, there is another event about to happen. You cannot turn a blind eye to all of the signs that we are being given, okay? Plague, COVID-19, all right? You're seeing locusts all over the place in the Middle East right now. Everything that the Bible told you was going to happen biblically is happening, all right? Do you really think that our ancestors would have written down lies? No. There is truth in everything you read, right? But at the end of the day, the best lie is founded on a kernel of truth. The reason all of us had the feeling that something big was about to happen is because everything aligning above our heads right now is energy. Everything. It's going to be that very energy that causes the next reset, okay? Now, there is accounts of ion storms, right? 3,000 mile an hour electrical winds blowing all over the planet. Sounds like a nuclear bomb, right? Well, what would explain the Southwest looking like a nuclear bomb went off? Having all of these canyons everywhere, like the Great Canyon, which, as I've said, mimics exactly what happens to steel when you introduce a plasma current into it. Okay? It's starting to make sense to you now, isn't it? It also makes a lot of sense when you start looking at the preparations that have been done. All the tunnels being dug underneath the United States right now, thousands and thousands and thousands of miles of them. Boys with toys do not build shit that they are not going to use. As I've said, there's a 200-year plan. All secret societies have one. Agenda 2030, etc., etc., etc. You don't build something you're not going to use. You don't build all these bunkers if you're not going to use them. You don't build all these tunnels if you're not going to use them. If you're China, you do not build ghost cities for no fucking reason. They know that there is a reset coming, and it is right around the corner. I can feel it. You can feel it, and you know that I'm telling you the truth deep down inside. You can feel it right now. You're getting goosebumps because you know what I'm saying is true. There's no way around it. We're programmed to feel this. All right? And at the end of the day, you can only look out for yourself, okay? Everything around us is a giant stage to keep us ignorant to this reset. And that's exactly how you control society afterwards. Because if you control those that eat, if you control those that are allowed to survive, if you can control those that are allowed to come into these bunkers, you control who comes out of these bunkers afterwards and who maintains power. Because what happened last time is they knew it was coming, right? They buried all of the structures that were left before. This ion storm came through, destroyed everything like they knew it was going to. The solar minimum ended. Things got warmer. They came out of their holes, right? Moved into these palaces and simply said, I'm the queen. I've always lived here. I'm part of this family line. This has always been our palace. When in fact, more than likely, they're not the real royal bloodline. They're not really the ones that were in power, but they were the ones that had the knowledge of the reset beforehand. And they used it to their advantage, and they're doing the same thing right now. Now, what if all of this bullshit about QAnonymous is to keep us in the fucking dark about this reset right around the corner? I'm about to get real fucking cynical on you right now. You lock everybody down, you keep them in their fucking house. You convince everybody that the Patriots are out there locking these sick bastards in power up for pedophilia. Tell them that we're eradicating them, but meantime, they're going into their bunkers and getting ready for the fucking reset. Use an open mind, man, and don't trust fucking anybody. You know something's coming, you can feel it. Everything around you is telling you we are on the brink of something gigantic. I know I'm not wrong about this. I absolutely know it. Comments, questions, concerns, put them in the comment section below. I definitely want to hear them. This may seem fantastical. This may seem like a crazy leap. It's not. The evidence is right there in front of your eyes. If you're too blind to see it, I don't know what to tell you. I know for a fact I'm onto something here. God bless and have a great day. I'll talk to you guys soon.